Hey guys, tonight we step away from heroes, monsters, and cataclysmic battles. Instead, we curl up next to a quietly burning fire. No thunder, no stormy drama, just the soft orange glow of something ancient and calm. Picture yourself walking through a dusky grove in ancient Greece, olive trees rustling gently in the breeze, the sky dimming into twilight.
In the distance, a soft orange flicker draws you closer. Therese no kraut. No trumpets.
Just a hearth, round, low, glowing. You feel the warmth before you even reach it. It doesn't shout for attention. It doesn't need to. That hearth belongs to Hestia, the goddess most people forget to remember. She's not off fighting titans or turning lovers into laurel trees.
Hestia just keeps the fire burning.
Literally. And metaphorically. And if that sounds boring, well, it kind of is, but in the coziest, sleepiest, safest way possible. Except, of course, for the part where you realize you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in ancient Greece without her.
No fire, no cooking, no warmth. A cold clay hut in the mountains, no flicker of flame, wolves howling in the dark. Yeah, good luck with that.
So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're here, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love knowing where and when you're listening. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge softly down a cobblestone path worn smooth by centuries of feet, sandals slapping gently in the dusk. There's a temple up ahead, but it's not grand or flashy.
It's quiet. Round.
With a small hole in the roof to let smoke curl skyward like lazy thought bubbles.
Inside, the floor is swept clean. The stone glows from within.
And right in the middle, the hearth.
Always the hearth.
You crouch beside it. It doesn't crackle, doesn't spit sparks or tell wild tales.
It hums, like a cat dreaming. You hold your hands near it and feel so meeting ancient. A kind of resurrent so primal it feels like your bones remember it. This is how it begins.
The ancient Greeks didn't just invent democracy, theater, or gym memberships. They had the sense to put fire at the heart of everything. At the center of each home, each temple, even the city itself, there burned a sacred flame. That wasn't just symbolic.
That was life. And that flame had a name. Hestia.
She's the firstborn of the Olympians. Daughter of Cronus and Rhea. First to be swallowed by Dad when he got paranoid and started gulping down his children. First to be rescued, too, when Zeus did that whole heroic regurgitation thing. Yeah, it's not the most graceful of origin stories, but hey, you try being divine with a dysfunctional family like that. Unlike her siblings, who got epic storylines involving thunderbolts, oceans, marriage feuds, and wild wine raves, Hestia chose the quiet route.
She took fire. Not flashy, lichtning fire. Not destruktive, burn down treu fire. But hearth fire. Cooking, warmth, storytelling, lullaby fire.
Historians still argue whether Hestia had actual temples in the early days or whether her temple was just the hearth in every home. Some say she had altars in nearly every city. Others believe her worship was so ordinary it rarely got recorded. Like the salt on your fries, essential, but never the headline.
And yet, she was first.
At every sacrifice, her name was called first. Every time a new colony was founded, settlers took fire from her flame in the mother city. Literally carrying civilization across the sea, one ember at a time. You picture a ship rocking on Aegean waves, its prow slicing through salty wind, a small vessel cradling a clay urn filled with coals from Hestia's hearth. That's how you start a city.
Not with a flag. With fire. Back at the hearth, your eyes grow heavy watching the embers shift. Sparks rise like teeny stars, 10 Pfade. The stone is warm beneath your fingers. The room smells like wood smoke and time.
A quirky old text from a minor Athenian priest claimed Hestia's flame never went out, not even in storms. Maybe it was metaphor. Maybe it was wishful thinking. Or maybe that priest just never saw a bad draft on a windy day.
Still, the idea stuck.
There's something deeply human in that belief. That somewhere, something is always burning quietly just for you. That if everything else crashes down, gods falling from the sky, cities swallowed by the sea, there's still a place where the fire waits.
You shift, nestle deeper into the dream. The air smells like Thyme, olive oil, and smoke. Some wäre in the distance, a lyre strums von soft note and 10 goes still.
Maybe you weren't expecting to meet a goddess like Hestia tonight. There are no winged sandals.
No rivers of the dead.
Just warm hands, quiet breath, and something that flickers, endures, and never asks to be noticed. But maybe that's exactly what you needed. Because in a world of loud myths and louder egos, there's something radical about stillness. About tending something gently. About lasting longer than the ones who burn brightest. And as the fire hums its lullaby and the temple walls blur into dream, you begin to understand. Sometimes the most powerful myth is the one that just keeps going.
Or maybe it wasn't.
Maybe, just maybe, the gods had better kindling than we do. You lean back, still seated near the hearth. The world outside blurs at the edges, but inside, this sanctuary feels timeless.
The flammes breate in arhytham oldertanwürds.
That's the kind of company Hestia keeps. She's the goddess who doesn't burst in.
She just is. Always burning. Always waiting.
And always perfectly content to not be the center of attention. Which is weird. You're in Olympus now, at least in your mind's eye, and you expect things to be loud. Thunder booming from Zeus. Screeching owls with Athena. Dionysus trying to DJ with wine goblets. And there, barely noticed, is Hestia, quietly refilling the soup pot. She doesn't demand attention, but she's the one everyone's glad is there.
In our world of divine drama, Hestia is a human exhale.
She's the only one of the 12 Olympians who never picks a fight, never throws a tantrum, never turns mortals into trees or spiders or swans.
She's Switzerland. But cozier.
You picture her standing off to the side while Aphrodite and Hera argue about something that definitely involves eyeliner and betrayal. Hestia just stirs the stew and nods quietly.
No Schäde, no Jutgment, no Eierolls.
Just consistent, patient warmth. Ancient Greek poets didn't write epics about her. No war was fought in her name. No demigods quested for her favor. She's rarely even in the gossip scrolls. But she's there in every home.
Every meal.
Every reunion around a fire. She's the goddess of not making a scene, and somehow, that might be the boldest move of all. Historians still debate whether Hestia's low profile was cultural reverence or just plain patriarchal oversight. One ancient scholar argued that her absence from popular myths was proof of her transcendence. Another just said flatly, she was too boring to write down. Nice. But boring is a bedtime superpower. Because, let's face it, not every deity needs a lightning bolt or a murder scandal. Some just need to keep the soup hot. And in case you think she's weak, think again. When two of the biggest gods in the pantheon, Poseidon and Apollo, both decided to pursue her romantically, which knowing them was probably more like harass her at brunch, she turned them both down. Politely. With a hand gesture that basically said, no thank you, but divinely. And then she asked Zeus to make her an eternal virgin so she could keep doing her job without interruption. Imagine turning down both the sea and the sun just to keep managing your spiritual crockpot.
Tats a different kind of power.
She didn't need a chariot. She didn't need a weapon. She had presence. The kind that fills a space without saying a word. The kind of calm that makes you realize how exhausted you are from all the noise.
You let your eyes drift across Olympus.
Bright marble columns rise in impossible geometry.
Clouds coil around the peaks.
The gods flit through like sitcom characters on speed. But there in the center, not physically but energetically, is Hestia.
Not demanding a Throne. Just warming the air.
In a way, she was the original quiet quitter, except instead of slacking off, she just refused the madness and did her own thing.
Forever.
One ancient vase shows her holding a branch of laurel and a flame.
Not a sword. Not a scroll. Just the stoof of peace.
Even her symbols whisper instead of shout. And yet, she was indispensable. Want to light a fire for sacrifice?
Start with Hestia.
Want to welcome guests to your home?
Thank Hestia.
Want your family not to freeze in the mountains this winter?
Hestia.
Want a reason to gather, eat, or simply sit together in the quiet? That's all her too. Some fringe sources claim she also had power over oaths made around the hearth. That anything promised in her presence became sacred. The kind of truth that doesn't need thunder to back it up, just a warm fire and eye contact. One old myth fragment, barely a footnote, mentions a mortal who broke an oath whispered by her fire and promptly lost his voice forever. Not struck by lightning. Not turned to stone. Just silenced. An eerie punishment, but weirdly fitting. You glance back toward the hearth.
The fire flickers softly, casting dancing shadows on the smoke walls.
It doesn't need to speak. It's already said everything. If you listen closely, the embers almost sound like breathing.
Your own? The goats? The rooms? Maybe hers.
And maybe that's the trick. Maybe her greatest myth is that she doesn't have one. Because she is the myth. The setting for every other story.
The invisible hearth behint evertale, e verdina, e ver visperet promise.
She is background, but sacred background.
The base layer of civilization itself.
You rest your head on your folded arms, curled gently in the warmth.
In the flicker. In the hush. Hestia isn't absent. She's everywhere. Like it knows jure Wettchen.
Not in a threatening way, just a gentle yes, I'm still here kind of way.
You exhale, long and slow.
Flame mirrors you, dancing in that same rhythm. You realize something strange. This flame doesn't seem to consume its fuel.
It just burns. Eternal.
Like it's anchored in something deeper than wood or wax.
You stretch out a hand. The warmth isn't too hot, not harsh.
It seeps in slowly, comforting like the weight of a thick blanket on a cold night.
You don't pull away.
In the ancient world, homes were built around hearths. Literally.
The hearth came first, then the house.
Architects would draw the center and spiral outward. Walls, roof, doors. But that glowing, crackling heart? That was the beginning. The blueprint of belonging. And Hestia was always there first. She wasn't just the fire, she was the center. Which explains why no statue of Hestia ever seems to show her moving. While other gods strike dramatic poses, arrows mid-flight, serpents curling around ankles, Hestia is nearly always seated.
Calm. Cloaked.
Looking exactly like someone who is not about to flip a table. Historians still argue whether this stillness in her iconography was meant to signify divine composure, or whether the artist simply didn't know what action to depict. You try drawing a goddess doing peaceful presence sometime. It's mostly hands in laps and distant gazes. But her power came from her stillness. She didn't throw storms, she softened them. She didn't rage at betrayal, she absorbed it with grace.
She didn't smite.
She simmered. And in Greek religion, simmering was sacred. Every public sacrifice, every festival, every state ritual began with Hestia.
No exceptions.
Even if the offering was to Zeus, Athena, or that one time someone got confused and prayed to two gods at once, Hestia still went first.
It was law. Divine Etikette. Start with fire. Start with her.
One quirky account from Delphi talks about a minor demigod forgetting to include Hestia in a sacrifice. Nothing exploded.
No monsters attacked.
But his crops withered for 7 years.
Coincidence? Maybe.
Or maybe the goddess of the hearth doesn't do vengeance, she just steps back. And without her presence, everything slowly unravels. You shift slightly by the fire, suddenly aware of its steady rhythm.
Therese no Thunder here, no curses, no transformation spells.
But it's more powerful than any war god's tantrum.
It's there.
Always. It's easy to overlook her in the myths. Most casual fans skip straight to Athena or Artemis. Even Hermes, the original ADHD icon, gets more airtime.
But Hestia?
She's the goddess you forgot was in the room. Until the power goes out, the house goes cold, and suddenly you understand exactly why she matters. A handful of fringe historians, mostly writing centuries after her prime, suggest Hestia's role was originally greater than Zeus. That she was the oldest and most central of all, and only later shuffled aside in Olympian politics. It's speculative but tempting. The idea that the oldest sibling, the quiet one, was actually the most divine.
You picture a divine boardroom, also Gods bickering over who gets what portfolio. Sky, sea, des, love, memes. And Hestia just schrugs en takese herd. You guys can fight. I'll be here marking soup.
And she was always there. Even when the Greeks transitioned into Roman times and renamed her Vesta, the role stayed. In Rome, the sacred fire of Vesta was guarded day and night by the Vestal Virgins, an elite priesthood of 6 women sworn to 30 years of service and celibacy, all to keep the eternal flame alive.
If it went out, massive public Schämme. Heavy penalties. Panic.
Because even if people weren't always conscious of her, they knew, when the fire goes out, civilization cracks.
You lie back on the stone floor.
It's warm now. You're not even sure how long you've been here.
The light flickers on the ziling up-ofe, shadows twisting like ancient dancers. The silence deepens. Not empty silence, but full. Held. A small breze steers through the doorway.
The fire shifts, but doesn't falter. Hestia's presence stays exactly the same. And somewhere deep in your half-sleeping brain, you realize, hers is the only kind of immortality you can actually rest inside. That doesn't need an audience.
You blink slowly.
You're still in the heart of some ancient sanctuary, a space that seems to exist outside time. The fire crackles, low and rhythmic, as if whispering old lullabies to itself. It doesn't beg for your attention, it simply holds it.
And Hestia?
She's probably still nearby, seated quietly. Watching you not with intensity, but with a kind of serene nonchalance, the way a mountain might watch a cloud. There's something deeply unshakable about that. While other deities crave temples the size of palaces and statues 40 feet tall, Hestia lives in modest places. Her temples were everywhere, but also nowhere spectacular. They weren't grand or showy. Many were just sacred fires maintained in city centers or tucked within private homes. In fact, in ancient Athens, the public hearth burned at the Prytaneum, the town hall. It wasn't just symbolic, it was literal. If a new colony was founded, they'd carry fire from that flame across the sea to light the hearth in the new city. The idea being, no matter how far you go, a piece of home of Hestia comes with you. And yes, historians still debate whether the fire was physically transported as embers, or rekindled through ceremonial friction. Either way, the sentiment is what mattered. You don't just pack food and sandals when founding a city, you pack belonging. You stretch your legs near the fire, letting the warmth reach your toes. It's easy to forget how essential something is until you feel it again. Like actual socks from the dryer. Or the quiet presence of a deity who won't blast you into a frog. But make no mistake, just because Hestia doesn't smite doesn't mean she's powerless. In fact, she may have made the smartest move of all. After all, Hestia was one of the original Olympians, firstborn of Cronus and Rhea. And if you remember your mythic birth orders, being first usually means eaten. Which, in Hestia's case, was unfortunately true. Cronus swallowed her whole, like he did with all his children, just to avoid being overthrown. Imagine being born only to be devoured. Then imagine getting rescued when Zeus finally made Cronus upchuck the siblings. Yes, it's as gross as it sounds. What's curious is this: Hestia was swallowed first and spat out last. Some say that makes her both the eldest and the youngest. Historians love to argue about this because myth time doesn't work like real time. Either way, it gives her a quiet kind of seniority. She's seen the beginning of everything, and chose not to get in the way. And when the whole pantheon of gods started fighting for power, for shrines, for humans' devotion, Hestia stepped back. She gave up her seat on Olympus to Dionysus, the party god, just to keep the peace. Literally said, "I'm good," and returned to her eternal fire. That's not weakness. That's knowing what truly matters.
You steer again, pulling your two cooks back from the heights of Olympus. The floor beneath you hums softly.
The fire hasn't dimmed.
It won't.
Some lesser-known myths claim that Hestia is the only deity Zeus never punished. That even he, the ultimate cosmic micromanager, respected her calm too much to interfere. There's a story, possibly apocryphal, that once when Hera and Demeter ganged up to demand something from Zeus, he turned to Hestia and asked for her opinion.
She said nothing.
Just nodded once toward the fire. And that was the end of the argument. A strange tidbit from a forgotten temple in Epirus mentions a practice called the silent circle, where worshippers would sit around a hearth in total silence for hours. No chants, no sacrifices.
Just presence.
They believed the longer they sat in stillness, the more likely Hestia was to bless their home. Which is either beautifully spiritual or an early form of introvert therapy. You shift on the floor again and realize you've barely moved in what feels like centuries. But somehow, it doesn't feel wasted. Hestia's time is measured differently. Not in battles won or empires built, but in quiet evenings. In shared meals. In fires that never go out. You start to imagine her not just in ancient homes, but modern ones too.
The warm butts of a kitchen at midnight. The hum of a radiator.
The glow of a candle left on during a storm. Those are her domains now. She doesn't need temples, just a moment of stillness and a little warmth. You yawn, not out of boredom, but ease. Like your whole body has started matching the rhythm of the flame.
Steady. Calm. Consistent.
And there, just outside your field of vision, you sense her again. Not watching, not hovering, just being.
Present, like breath. Like heartbeat. Like home.
Because sometimes the most powerful myth is the one that doesn't need to be told out loud. Soft blue glow of your fridge light when you open it just to stare.
That too is Hestia. Not flashy, not demanding, just Stern Tere Stern.
Keeping you company even when you're unsure what you're hungry for. She's the goddess of pause. Of familiarity. Of everything you forget to notice until the power goes out and your microwave clock starts blinking. In a world of thunderbolt throwers and sea shakers, Hestia stays behind to make sure your soup doesn't boil over.
She's the one who locks the door behind you.
Who waits up with a lamp when you're out late. Who makes sure the embers are banked just right so they'll still be warm in the morning.
You glance at the fire again.
It hasn't moved, but then again, it has. There's a different shape to it now, like a spiral curling inward. You could almost swear it's breathing. Maybe it is. Let's not forget, Hestia wasn't just the hearth of the home, but of the entire polis.
The city itself.
The way we think about neighborhoods, communities, gathering places, that's her architecture. Ancient Greeks didn't just see her in the fireplace. They saw her in the idea of coming together.
The assembly. The marketplace. The dinner table.
She was the glue, the social fabric woven in flame. Mainstream historians agree that her worship, while never militarized or theatrical, was foundational. You wouldn't hold a council without her. You wouldn't swear an oath. Even diplomatic envoys, traveling between hostile states, were under Hestia's protection. They carried the safety of hospitality with them like a cloak, because her fire lit the path. And scholars still debate whether this made Hestia more of a moral force than a deity in the traditional sense. After all, she didn't intervene in human affairs with miracles or curses.
She just was.
And that constant presence gave people the courage to build, to stay, to belong. But not everyone noticed. She rarely appears in the juicy mythological drama. You won't find her turning into a swan, hurling mountains, or being chased by a lust-struck half-goat.
No scandals. No curses.
No feuds with mortals. Which, honestly, makes her kind of a goddess hipster. Way ahead of the drama curve.
Oh, Poseidon's flooding another Island? That's cool.
I'm baking bread. Yet once, just once, two gods did pursue her. Both Apollo and Poseidon tried to win her hand. Imagine being so quietly powerful that even the sun god and the sea god are like, hey, maybe you're the one. And what did Hestia do?
She declined both.
Politely. Then took a vow of eternal virginity and devoted herself to the hearth.
You try to picture the scene. Poseidon, flexing with a trident. Apollo, strumming allure, shirtless for no reason.
Hestia, wrapped in wool, holding a ladle like a scepter, saying, thanks, but I've got things on the stove. And here's the quirky bit, Zeus respected her decision. So much so, he granted her a permanent seat at Olympus, even if she didn't use it much, and honored her above all the rest. So while the others were off having identity crises and mood swings, Hestia kept the world intact. That sounds almost too perfect, doesn't it? Which is why a few fringe theories suggest she had secrets.
Not malitius ones, just moments.
Hidden episodes lost to time. One lost manuscript from a minor Hellenistic poet claims Hestia once wandered the earth in disguise, tending roadside fires and giving shelter to travelers.
A goddess hidden in plain sight.
The idea still stirs in folk stories, passed down quietly. The old woman by the fire might be her. Which, let's face it, is a much nicer surprise than the usual Greek twist ending. You look at the flame again, half expecting it to wink at you.
It doesn't.
But the warmth deepens, curling into your bones like a memory. It feels like sitting on your grandmother's sofa, the one with the ugly blanket and the smell of cinnamon. It feels like staying inside on a rainy day. Like leaning your head against someone's shoulder and not having to say anything.
That's Hestia.
You don't worship her with fanfare. You don't offer gold or slay monsters in her name. You just show up.
Sit down. Light the fire. Let it be.
And in return, she keeps you. Even now, as your thoughts begin to wander and your limbs grow heavier, she stays beside you.
Not wetching. Not judging. Just holding the space.
Because that's her greatest gift. She doesn't demand your loyalty. She simply makes you feel at home. So quietly important that people almost forgot she existed, slipping behind the grandeur of Zeus's lightning and Athena's battle cries. You probably wouldn't think a goddess who refuses to throw a single lightning bolt or shapeshift into an animal would get much airtime, but her story is strangely compelling. Like that one friend who never talks much but always remembers your birthday and brings cake. The eternal hearth wasn't just a cozy metaphor. In the earliest days of Greek civilization, fire was life itself. Without it, you couldn't cook your food, warm your bones, or keep wild animals at bay. Hestia's flame was the axis around which the whole household turned. Archaeologists have uncovered hearths dating back tens of thousands of years, long before the Greeks began telling their stories. The hearth was the first communal space, the first symbol of civilization. Even the simplest homes had a central fire. This fact anchors Hestia in something profoundly human. She represents that primal spark that led us from caves to cities. She's not a goddess of war or love, but of stability, the slow, steady pulse beneath the chaos. Historians still argue whether Hestia was originally a separate deity or evolved from the general reverence for fire that was common in many ancient cultures. Some suggest she was once a primordial force of fire itself, tamed and personified by the Greeks to symbolize domestic harmony. You can see traces of this in other cultures, too. The Roman goddess Vesta shares many characteristics with Hestia, including her virginal status and eternal flame. And in India, the goddess Agni holds the fire's sacred role. Fire worship is universal, because fire is universal. But unlike the flashy and temperamental Olympians, Hestia's power is subtle and enduring.
Schieße Pulse beniaze tanda.
There's an old, almost forgotten story about her presence during the Trojan War. While gods took sides, stirring up battles and heartbreak, Hestia remained distant, tending her hearth. Some poets claimed that her flame was the only thing untouched by the war's devastation. That calm center, even in the eye of the storm, is why Hestia mattered so much. You sit back and imagine those ancient homes.
Small, smoky, lit by flickering fires.
Families gathered, telling stories, sharing bread.
The smoke swirling around the wooden beams like invisible blessings.
That's Hestia's realm, quiet, undramatic, but essential.
And the wire des thing?
Despite her importance, Hestia never had temples built for her alone. Instead, her presence was in every home's hearth, every city's central flame. She was worshipped everywhere and nowhere specific.
Quirky fast?
In some places, the hearth's fire was kept burning 24/7, sometimes by women called Vestal Virgins, Roman priestesses devoted to Vesta, Hestia's counterpart. Their duty was sacred but lonely, and if the fire ever went out, it was seen as a disaster. This duty inspired many to think about how delicate balance really is. That one tiny spark can mean the difference between safety and ruin. You yawn again, letting your eyelids flutter with the quiet crackle. The fire pulses softly, like a heartbeat you didn't realize you've been holding. There's something deeply comforting about that steady glow.
It reminds you that no matter the chaos, some things endure.
Some things are worth protecting, not with swords or magic, but with attention and care. And maybe that's why Hestia remains quietly relevant, even if she rarely steals the spotlight. You keep sinking deeper into the warmth, and the story drifts on as naturally as the smoke curling above the hearth. It's time to look at Hestia's role beyond the household, how her eternal flame became a symbol for whole cities, even entire nations. You probably didn't expect a goddess associated with the hearth to hold such political power, but in ancient Greece, that was exactly the case. The city-state, or polis, was built around the sacred fire of Hestia, which burned at the heart of every public gathering place. This fire wasn't just for light or warmth, it was a living emblem of community, unity, and stability. The city's hearth, called the Prytaneum, was the official center of political life. This was where leaders met, decrees were issued, and citizens gathered to celebrate or mourn. The flame here, dedicated to Hestia, was never allowed to go out. It symbolized the life of the city itself. If it did, people feared disaster, chaos, or worse. Historians still argue whether the importance of the Prytaneum fire was more symbolic or practical. Some say it was a way to unify a fractious population around a common ritual, while others believe it was an ancient way to signify the city's divine protection. A quirky detail you might like: the Olympic flame tradition, started in modern times, is actually inspired by this ancient practice. The idea of carrying the fire from Olympia to the host city is a nod to Hestia's eternal flame, which symbolized purity, peace, and continuity. Remember, this wasn't a small deal. Lighting the fire involved sacred rituals, and the priests in charge had to be impeccably trustworthy. After all, extinguishing Hestia's flame was like accidentally hitting the city's off button. Imagine for a moment, the fire crackling under a stone canopy, officials in robes gathered around, the smoke twisting upward as if reaching for the gods themselves. You can almost smell the combination of wood smoke and burning olive oil lamps. It's a sensory experience connecting every citizen to the divine. On the flip side, though, the absence of dramatic mythic adventures made Hestia's worship almost invisible to outsiders. No epic quests, no tragic love stories, just a steady presence that kept everything from falling apart. But that's what makes her story so powerful. You don't need fireworks to be important. Sometimes, it's the quiet, persistent flames that shape history. By now, your eyes feel heavier, but you're still curious. How did this goddess of calm influence so many aspects of daily life? Well, she was the ultimate peacemaker. Whenever family disputes arose, or even city conflicts threatened, invoking Hestia's name was like calling for a truce. Her sacred fire was neutral ground, untouchable and respected by all. So even when the gods bickered and mortals fought, Hestia held the space where peace could be restored.
You smile to yourself.
It's kind of like having that one friend who never takes sides but somehow makes sure everyone gets home safely. The eternal hearth burns on, unassuming but indispensable. Much like the quiet part of your brain telling you to relax and let go. And as your breath slows, you find yourself grateful for the steady light that has never gone out. The night deepens, and as you settle further into the soft embrace of the story, you realize that Hestia's influence stretched beyond fire and family. It quietly shaped ancient Greek religion and society in ways you might never have expected. You see, Hestia's virginity wasn't just a quirk of her character, it was a fundamental symbol of her independence and purity. You might find it amusing, or a bit ironic, that out of all the Olympians, Hestia is the one goddess who never married, never pursued romantic drama, and never threw a tantrum. While Aphrodite's love affairs and Hera's jealous rages filled scrolls, Hestia stayed serene and unattached, like the calm middle seat on a turbulent flight. This virgin goddess label was both a mark of her sacred role and a reason for her lesser-known status in popular mythology. Historians still argue whether Hestia's virginity was an original feature or a later development designed to emphasize her role as the eternal hearthkeeper, always welcoming but never consumed. It's like she had a permanent do not disturb sign, protecting the sacred fire she tended. And here's a quirky bit. Some ancient rituals demanded that no romantic entanglements or disruptions take place in the hearth's sacred space. Even the priestesses who tended Hestia's fire often took vows of chastity, reflecting her pure, undistracted presence. Imagine being sworn to celibacy because your job is to keep a fire going. Talk about dedication. But beyond the chastity, Hestia's quiet, steadfast nature made her a powerful symbol for social order. Families, cities, and even the whole Greek world relied on her presence to maintain stability. Her virginal image wasn't about romance, it was about trustworthiness and consistency. And that leads us to a fascinating historical fact. In some Greek cities, when the Olympian gods were being assigned their domains, Hestia was offered a grand palace or kingdom, but she chose instead to remain close to mortals, in their homes and hearts. She declined glory and power, a choice that sets her apart from practically every other deity. You can't help but admire that. It's like she understood that true power lies in quiet service rather than loud conquest. In a culture obsessed with heroic exploits, Hestia was a gentle reminder of a different kind of strength. Remember that time we talked about the Vestal virgins in Rome? They shared a similar role, maintaining the sacred fire of Vesta and living lives dedicated to the city's safety. The parallels suggest a shared ancient reverence for hearth and home that transcended cultures. By this point, your mind drifts lazily, imagining the warmth and stillness of that eternal flame, the gentle glow that has neither wavered nor dimmed through countless centuries. And just like Hestia's hearth, you feel yourself being soothed, held safe by something timeless and sure. You're drifting deeper now, the story's calm pulse syncing with your own breathing. Hestia's domain, the hearth, wasn't just a cozy corner of ancient homes, it was a sacred space tied to some of the oldest and most important rituals in Greek life. The hearth fire was where families gathered to eat, pray, and make offerings to the gods. It was the very heart of domestic religion. You might find it surprising, but in Greek homes, every meal started with a small sacrifice, often a piece of bread or a drop of wine, offered to Hestia. This ritual was called the first offering, meant to honor her and keep the home's sacred flame alive. Ignoring this simple gesture was like failing to say good morning to the goddess who kept your house safe. Historians still debate whether this daily ritual was originally an individual family tradition or evolved from larger communal sacrifices to Hestia in city centers. Some scholars think the practice reflects the blending of private and public worship in ancient Greek society. A quirky tidbit for you: ancient Greeks believed that if you neglected the hearth's fire or forgot to honor Hestia, the whole family could fall under a curse of bad luck or illness. So yes, there was serious social pressure to keep that fire burning, and your offerings made. Remember the old sitcom trope of mom yelling, "Don't forget to say grace"? Turns out, the Greeks had a much more direct divine reason to keep their blessings in order. Now, think about the sensory experience. The soft flicker of flames casting shadows on stone walls, the warm scent of burning wood mixed with incense, the murmur of prayers whispered around the fire, and the clinking of cups filled with wine. The hearth was more than heat, it was a living altar. And while you're imagining that, historians still argue about the connection between Hestia and the mysterious concept of oikos, the ancient Greek word for home, household, and family economy all at once. Was Hestia a guardian of just the fire, or did she protect the entire social fabric of family life? There's no easy answer, but it's clear that Hestia's role stretched far beyond what meets the eye. Even the Olympian gods, for all their power, respected her hearth. When Zeus and his siblings fought for dominion, Hestia was offered a place of honor among them, but she always chose the humble hearth over the throne. So here you are, the glow warming your skin as your thoughts soften, feeling a deep connection to a tradition thousands of years old. That slow, steady heartbeat of fire and family anchors you in a world that sometimes feels too loud and too fast. Hestia's eternal flame flickers, steady and calm, inviting you to rest in its timeless embrace. Your thoughts linger in that warm, flickering glow as you realize Hestia's story isn't just about fire. it's also about the social glue that holds communities together. Ancient Greek households weren't just places to live, they were microcosms of society. Hestia's presence ensured harmony within these units, promoting cooperation and respect between family members. You might be surprised to learn that the hearth fire was seen as a mediator during family disputes. When tempers flared, people would turn toward Hestia's flame, reminding themselves to keep peace and respect within the home. It was a quiet but powerful social tool. Historians still argue whether Hestia's calming influence was originally part of her divine nature or a later interpretation added to reinforce social order. Either way, her role as peacemaker was critical. Here's a quirky fact. In some regions, when families feuded, they would come together to share a meal around the hearth and renew their bonds in Hestia's name. This ritual meal wasn't just about food, it was about rekindling trust and unity. Imagine that, arguing until the fire brings you back to calm. The hearth's warmth fostered a sense of belonging that extended beyond family to the wider community. In fact, the Prytaneans' public hearth symbolized this unity on a larger scale, but the intimate hearth fire was just as essential. You can almost hear the crackling flames and smell the fragrant smoke rising as you picture these gatherings. Neighbors sharing food, stories, and laughter, all under Hestia's watchful eye. There's a scholarly debate about how this concept of the hearth as a social center influenced later Western ideas about home and family. Some argue that Hestia's image shaped cultural notions of hospitality and domestic virtue. And speaking of hospitality, Hestia's sacred flame was often the first thing guests encountered when entering a Greek home. It was a symbol of warmth, welcome, and safety. The phrase hearth and home still resonates because of this enduring image. You might chuckle at the thought of Hestia as the original hostess, quietly making sure everyone's comfortable and no one's starting a fight at the dinner table. As you feel your eyelids grow heavier, you sense that Hestia's eternal flame is more than myth. It's a reminder of the power in quiet constancy, the strength in being the steady center around which life turns.
Jor bretingslos, Mädchen se gentle RHYTHAM of the fire.
And in this moment, the peaceful legacy of Hestia's hearth feels like a lullaby whispered through time. As you drift further, you realize Hestia's influence quietly shaped not just homes but entire cities. Ancient Greeks built public hearths, called Prytanea, at the center of their towns, an eternal fire burning day and night as a symbol of communal unity and divine presence. This wasn't just a practical flame for warmth or cooking. It represented the city's heart, an unbroken link between citizens, gods, and governance. In fact, the Prytanean was often the seat of government and hospitality, where important guests were welcomed and civic duties carried out. Historians still debate whether the Prytanean's eternal fire was inspired by Hestia's domestic hearth or developed independently as a civic symbol. Regardless, it shows how the goddess's essence expanded from the home to the polis, the city-state. A quirky side note, the fire in the Prytanean was sometimes used to light other sacred fires throughout the city and surrounding temples, like a divine spark spreading order and connection. Think of it as the ancient version of passing the torch in a relay race, but with way more religious weight. Remember that time we joked about don't play with fire? Well, these eternal flames were taken very seriously. Anyone caught letting the fire die was seen as risking the city's safety and prosperity. Some cities even had special priests or priestesses tasked solely with tending this fire, kind of like the original firefighters but with robes. The presence of Hestia's fire in public life reinforces how the Greeks saw religion, family, and politics as intertwined. Her hearth wasn't just a homey comfort, it was a crucial element of civic identity and stability. You can almost imagine the flickering flames lighting up stone columns and marble floors, casting long shadows during nighttime gatherings of city leaders and honored guests. Scholars debate whether the Prytanean's fire influenced other cultures' sacred flames, like the Vestal Virgin's fire in Rome or the sacred fires in Vedic India, showing that this symbolic hearth might be a shared thread weaving through ancient civilizations. As the warmth of this vision settles around you, you feel the gentle weight of tradition, how one simple flame became a beacon of connection and continuity across generations. And as your eyes grow heavier, you rest in the knowledge that Hestia's fire still burns in the spirit of community and home, even if you never see the flame itself. Your mind floats softly as you consider Hestia's presence in sacred rituals beyond the hearth and Prytanean. The goddess was honored at major festivals, but unlike the boisterous celebrations for Dionysus or the thunderous contests for Zeus, Hestia's rites were quietly profound, an intimate acknowledgement of the foundational fire that underpinned all Greek life. One such festival was the Hestiaea, held annually to honor the goddess and ensure the hearth's eternal flame never faltered. Families and city officials alike participated, rekindling fires and offering sacrifices that were modest but deeply sincere. The ceremony's simplicity was its power, no grand spectacles, just a collective commitment to continuity and care. Historians still argue whether the Hestia was widespread across all Greek city-states or mostly confined to select regions. The variation in practice highlights how local traditions shaped the goddess's worship in subtle but meaningful ways. Here's a quirky detail. In some locales, the festival included a ritual where the fire was passed through a chain of participants, symbolizing the unbroken connection from past to future generations. Imagine the warmth of hands held close, each person responsible for carrying the flame onward, literally and metaphorically. You might picture the faint glow of torches against the night sky, the quiet murmur of prayers, and the smell of burning olive oil incense mingling with crisp evening air. These ceremonies underscored Hestia's role as guardian of time itself, her fire a metaphor for life's ongoing flow, never ceasing, never fading. Interestingly, scholars debate whether this symbolic eternal flame influenced later Christian practices of the Paschal candle, or even modern ceremonies like Olympic torch relays, showing Hestia's quiet legacy stretching far beyond ancient Greece. As you nestle deeper into your blanket, the ritual's peaceful cadence feels like a heartbeat syncing with your own, steady, reliable, calming. And just like that, the eternal fire flickers gently in your mind, a soft glow guiding you into rest. Now, as your thoughts wander toward the quieter corners of mythology, you might find it intriguing that Hestia's role, while serene, wasn't without its moments of subtle power struggles. Despite her peaceful nature, she was involved in one of the most famous divine contests in Greek myth, the claim for the patronage of the city of Athens. You probably expected Athena or Poseidon to win this contest outright, right? Well, Hestia was actually offered the chance to compete but gracefully stepped aside. When Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, creating a saltwater spring, and Athena offered the olive tree, Hestia refused to engage in the rivalry, choosing to maintain her position as the goddess of the eternal hearth instead. Historians still argue whether Hestia's withdrawal was a later mythological addition meant to emphasize her impartiality and domestic focus or an original part of her character in ancient stories. A quirky tidbit: this act of stepping aside made Hestia a symbol of selflessness and stability. In some lesser-known myths, her refusal to compete was interpreted as her maintaining balance and peace among the gods, which was no small feat given their legendary tempers. Think of it like the calm friend at a heated debate who doesn't pick sides but somehow manages to keep everyone from storming out. Her role here highlights the unique nature of Hestia's power, not flashy or combative, but steady and indispensable. She's the quiet anchor that holds the stormy seas of divine drama together. The olive tree offered by Athena wasn't just a gift of food and oil, it symbolized peace and prosperity, which ironically fits with Hestia's domain of harmony and home. Scholars continue to debate how much influence Hestia's figure had in real ancient civic politics, especially in Athens where Athena was the official patron. Some suggest that the myth subtly reflects shifts in social values from the domestic sphere to public life. As you let this story settle, imagine the soft glow of the hearth calming the heated air of Olympus, a reminder that sometimes, the most powerful choice is to stay out of the fight. Your mind begins to trace the delicate threads between Hestia's eternal flame and the way she quietly influenced everyday life beyond mythology. In many Greek households, the hearth was literally the center of family life, where meals were cooked, stories told, and warmth shared during cold nights. But there's more than just cozy imagery here. Hestia's fire was a sacred trust, kept alive by the house's head, often the eldest woman or man. Letting it die out was a bad omen, potentially signaling the family's decline or misfortune. This responsibility added a profound spiritual dimension to the mundane task of tending a fire. Historians still argue about whether the domestic rituals involving the hearth were uniform across Greece or varied widely by region and social class. Evidence suggests wealthier families might have had specialized servants for this, while poorer households had to be more hands-on. A quirky and somewhat funny fact: some Greeks used the hearth fire's ashes for medicinal purposes, believing they could treat wounds or purify spaces. Imagine burning your breakfast and then using the ashes as medicine, multi-purpose fire. The hearth also played a crucial role in rites of passage, like weddings and funerals. During weddings, the bride would carry a torch from the hearth to light her new home's fire, symbolizing the continuity of family and tradition. At funerals, ashes from the hearth were sprinkled on graves, linking the dead back to the eternal flame of home. There's an ongoing scholarly debate about how these domestic rituals influenced later Western cultural ideas of home and family values. Some anthropologists argue that Hestia's hearth set a precedent for viewing the household as a sacred space. You might chuckle thinking about how the goddess of the hearth could be seen as the original home security system. Always watching, always ensuring everything's running smoothly. As your eyes grow heavy, you feel the comforting pulse of the hearth's glow, a reminder that even the smallest flame can hold the deepest meanings.
The flame flickers softly in your mind's eye, a beacon of warmth, stability, and connection that never truly goes out.
As you begin to drift toward the end of this gentle journey, It's worth reflecting on Hestia's legacy, a goddess who embodies steadiness, warmth, and the quiet power of home. While the other Olympians often steal the spotlight with thunderbolts or dramatic feats, Hestia's story is the soft glow behind the scenes, the eternal flame that never demands attention but always holds everything together. Her eternal hearth reminds you of the importance of small, consistent acts, lighting the fire, tending the flame, holding space for others. It's a reminder that even in a world filled with chaos, there is value in calm, in presence, in continuity. Historians still debate how much the cult of Hestia influenced daily life outside the home, but her symbolism resonates clearly. She represents the warmth at the center of human experience. A quirky thought to end on: Hestia was one of the few gods who never left Olympus, never had scandalous affairs, and never picked a fight. You might call her the mom friend of the gods, keeping the family together without any drama. Think about the modern equivalents: that steady presence who always has your back, the quiet anchor in your life, the comforting background hum to your busy day. As your breathing slows and your eyelids grow heavier, imagine yourself sitting beside Hestia's hearth, the fire's soft crackle soothing your mind. This is the warmth that never fades, the calm center of an ancient world and somehow your own.
Stern, Stern, Wind down, Stern, Stern.
The flame dims gently, shadows stretching long and slow across your room as you sink deeper into the calm. The stories of gods and hearths fade softly into the quiet hum of your breath, the rhythmic pulse of peace settling around you like a familiar blanket. In this stillness, the ancient fire burns on, not loud or fierce, but steady and sure, a silent promise of home, safety, and warmth. You don't have to chase grand adventures tonight. Sometimes, simply resting in the quiet flame's glow is enough. Let your thoughts soften and wander as you drift closer to sleep, carried on the gentle warmth of an eternal hearth. And as you close your eyes, remember, the simplest fires tended with care are the ones that light the way forward.
Sleep well.